that this not be done by regulation, but it be done by legislation. Now, the Lieberman-Warner bill of 2007 and 2008 actually died in committee. These were the cap and trade bills that came up under Bush. Notice Lieberman-Warner as the sponsors. And for those who think Joe Lieberman is a friend. Those bills basically died in committee. Why would EPA, even EPA itself in many cases, and others, prefer legislation? Well, because they know that if EPA passes the regulations, they will be hit with a barrage of lawsuits, which would basically hold them up for a decade in passing a lot of this stuff. And groups would challenge the regulations at every level, and it would take 10 years to go through the court system, right? And a lot of this would be overturned in the courts and would create a huge legal mess. So they would prefer that this cap and trade be passed by legislative fiat instead of the fiat of the EPA. Thus, the cap and trade bill that's coming along right now. Right? Does everything what I'm saying make sense? Anybody got a question factually about what I've said? Anything I'm saying not make sense? The two prongs of regulation, either regulation by the EPA, by fiat, empowered by the Supreme Court's statement that they can use the Clean Air Act, the fact that because CO2 declared as a pollutant, CO2 just comes from everything, and versus the cap and trade coming through the legislative proposal. As it stands right now, I am hoping that cap and trade is actually dead. Even Democratic senators who are in, many Democratic, congressmen, I should say congressmen, because it's a congressional issue, it was a congressional issue passed, realize that they're from conservative districts. And even the Democrats know that this is a job killer. Don't believe for 1 second that any of this is about creating jobs or about stimulating the economy or any of that. This is motivated by this ideology of control. None of this is about creating jobs or stimulating the economy. All of this is about imposing these ideological views over this through control of the economy. I'll give you just one example of why that is so. Take so-called alternate power, solar and wind. Now, it should be obvious that in the free market, if alternate and wind were good sources of energy, greedy capitalists, and I mean that in a positive sense, would jump right on this stuff, would start producing this stuff. Home Depot would be selling a home solar kit and home wind kits. Or you can go to Home Depot, right? You can buy a home generator for your house. You can buy it yourself, have your own electrician put it into it yourself, or you can hire them and they'll do it, right? But you can't buy home solar or home wind kits from Home Depot. Why not? Because they're ridiculous, they're not cost effective, you never get your money back, and everybody knows it. So the only way they'll work is with massive subsidies. Even with the massive subsidies, they're massive losers. They're technological failures. The Rancho Seco power plant in California is a great example of this. It was a 980-something megawatt nuclear power plant shut down in Sacramento after years of overruns, environmental protests, and massive changes. The state of California put hundreds of millions of dollars into solar arrays. At one point, it was the largest solar array in the world, and in the end, it produced 0.05% of the authority's electricity, which was enough, in the authority's own words, to take up some of the air conditioning load on a hot summer day. And the only reason it worked was because they bought electricity from the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant down the coast, a dual nuclear plant, 2 gigawatt, right? And this plant has been a massive failure, but you walk through and you see 20 acres of solar arrays, and they pointed out you get a massive apparition of all this energy. In fact, they're buying it from neighboring states into nuclear power plants. It doesn't work. Right? It doesn't work. So what are they going to do about this? It doesn't work even with the subsidies. How can you make solar and wind then attractive if it doesn't work? There's only one way to do it. How do you do it? You raise the price of coal, hydroelectric, nuclear, and natural gas power so high that suddenly it looks attractive. And how do you do that? You put a tax on carbon. So the whole purpose of cap and trade is to come up with a phony baloney tax on carbon, which is intentionally, and this is straight out intention, this is its intention, to raise the price of energy by 50 to 100%. It's a giant protection racket. It's the mafia coming to your door, and they say, give me $200 and I'll offer you protection. And you say, but I'm saying who do I need protection from? And they say, well, there's always us. Right? And so the whole intention of cap and trade is to raise energy prices massively so that solar and wind will look attractive. That's the whole purpose of it. So if they come to you and say it will cause lower energy prices, the correct response is liar. The whole approach to it, the whole purpose of it, is to raise energy prices in order to make a market, a so-called, quote, market, unquote, for the solar and the wind. And we all know that if the mafia comes to your door with a shotgun and, it gets money from you that way under threat of force, you're not paying a businessman in a market. That's extortion. And what the government's creating here is not a market. There's no market for carbon. It's just an extortion racket. And so the whole purpose of it is to raise the price of energy intentionally so that you, the American people, can get used to paying double what energy costs right now. So that you can get used to that. So you can get used to living like the Europeans with much lower standard of living, much lower disposable income than you have now. So you'll get used to living that way. And if you want to see how solar and wind is going, actually look at the United Kingdom. It's a great example, and you find that the industry is dying, the companies are shutting it down. It's been a massive failure. If you also want to see how the future actually goes, look at the status of the wind project.